Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Dalet. And Mirtz Hashem, today we will be learning Daf Reish Pei Aleph Amud Beis. We pick up today on the very bottom line of the Shulchan Aruch on Reish Pei Aleph Amud Aleph with a brand new Siman and a brand new topic. Siman Taf Yud Zayin Hilchos Rosh Chodesh, the halachas of Rosh Chodesh Ubay Sif Echad. And here we have one sif. So, after many months of learning Hilchos Shabbos, Hilchos Erevin, we completed that study, and now we turn on to other topics. We come to the halachas of Rosh Chodesh. Our learning today should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanasuna Batzara Ubashivya, Haim Debei Bayam Ubein Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachim Aleihem, the Yitziem Mitzara Lervacha Me'afela La'ira Mishibur L'Geula, Hashta Bagolo of Izman Kariv and Emar Main. Our learning should be a schus Refuah Shalema for Achia Gadol Moshe Ben Esther Fradel Yitzchak Ben Zion Ben Dusha Rivka Bashir Leah Chava Hadassah Bas Rezel Serel Yeshua Levi Ben Ahuva Malka Chana Trani Bas Batsheva and Yerucham Ben Masha. They should all have a Refuah Shalema B'Seich Shar Chole Yisrael. Siman Taf Yud Zayin Hilchos Rosh Chodesh Ubay Sif Echad. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph. Rosh Chodesh mutter ba'asiyas malacha. On Rosh Chodesh, it is completely mutter to do any sort of malacha. There are no restrictions on malacha on Rosh Chodesh. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Aleph, Rosh Chodesh. Minig kadmenenu, there's a very old minig, says the Mishnah Berurah, levarich es hachodesh, to do what we refer to colloquially as Rosh Chodesh benching, or Shabbos mivarchim, to bench, to bless the coming month. Minik kadmenenu, levarich es hachodesh b'Shabbos shelifnei Rosh Chodesh, on the Shabbos that precedes Rosh Chodesh. And this, of course, is the beautiful tefillos that we have in the before Musaf on Shabbos, the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh. There's a beautiful Yehiratzain that was composed by Rav. It's brought down in the Gemara in Brachas. Misha Asanisim Lava Isenu. We announce the Moilid, and finally we say Rosh Chodesh Pliny. So very soon it'll be Rosh Chodesh Elul Yihiyeh B'Yoim. It will be on the following day or the following days. Haba Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael L'Tova. So this is what we call benching Rosh Chodesh Shabbos Bevarchim. Says the Mishnah Chavetz Chaim, the Mishnah Berurah. This is a minik kadmenenu. Continues the Chavetz Chaim and he says, Chutz milifnei Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. However, if you notice, we don't have Shabbos Mevarchim before Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. Now, what's Rosh Chodesh Tishrei? Rosh Hashanah. So there is no Shabbos Mevarchim before Rosh Hashanah. And says the Chavetz Chaim, v'remez lazeh. There's actually a very interesting remez. There's a hint in the pasuk, an allusion in the pasuk to the fact that we don't have Shabbos Mevarchim before Rosh Hashanah. What is that? Says the Chavetz Chaim, because the pasuk says tiku b'chodesh shofar on Rosh Chodesh. Tiku b'chodesh, on Rosh Chodesh we blow a shofar. Tiku b'chodesh shofar b'keseh, in the covering. The word b'keseh means in the covering. What does that mean? It means when the moon is covered. The beginning of the month, Rosh Chodesh, we have a tiny little sliver of moon. We have the new moon. So the moon is largely covered. B'keseh liyoim chagenu, on the day of our chag. So we have a chag of Rosh Hashanah that is actually the first day of the month. So it's b'keseh. It's when the moon is covered. And that is what Yom Tov, Rosh Hashanah. Tiku b'chodesh shofar. It's a reference to Rosh Hashanah when we blow shofar. Says the Chavetz Chaim, here we have an allusion to the fact that there is no Shabbos Mevarchim before Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, because it's b'keseh. We keep it covered. We don't have a Shabbos Mevarchim, an announcement on the preceding Shabbos that Rosh Chodesh Tishrei is coming. Now, why is that? Why wouldn't we have Shabbos Mevarchim? Why are we kind of treating Rosh Chodesh Tishrei and Rosh Hashanah differently than any other Rosh Chodesh? So if you take a look at the words of the Chavetz Chaim in Sharet Zionos Katan Beis, he says, Ve'ikar Atamu, the main reason for this is, to Kevin the Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, who Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah, since Rosh Chodesh Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah, L'moiser, it would be completely extraneous, lahazkir zois b'kodim, to make an announcement that Rosh Chodesh is coming. Upashut, says the Chavetz Chaim, this is another pashut. This is very obvious. We're going to see that the main reason we have Shabbos Mevarchim is because Rosh Chodesh is something that unfortunately people could forget. Rosh Chodesh is something that is not so prominent on the calendar. It's not a Yom Tov, right? So people could become unaware of Rosh Chodesh. You come to Shul on Shabbos, you have Shabbos Mevarchim. Oh, everybody knows Rosh Chodesh is this week on Tuesday. Rosh Chodesh is this week on Thursday. Oh, have to remember Yalav Yavai, etc., etc. So they know that Rosh Chodesh is coming. Says the Chavetz Chaim, we don't need to do that for Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. Nobody is forgetting that Rosh Hashanah is coming. Between all the Yom Tov preparations and between Slichas and between blowing shofar, all the entire month of Elul, and hopefully doing tshuva, etc., etc., right? No one's forgetting, no one's unaware that Rosh Hashanah is coming, and therefore there is no need to have a Shabbos Mevarchim. Continues the Chavetz Chaim in Mishnah Berurah Katan Aleph. V'yesh b'kaimos, there are locales, says the Chavetz Chaim, she'ein noi hagid levarech Rosh Chodesh Av. There are places where they do not do Shabbos Mevarchim before Rosh Chodesh Av. Why? Mishum shu Chodesh shel Peronius. Because unfortunately Av, right? Menachem Av. Av is a month of Peronius, of punishment. Mishenichnas Av, mematin b'simcha. And therefore there are places where they don't do Shabbos Mevarchim on Chodesh Av. The Magen Avram, the Machzah Shekel, they bring down a pasuk from Iyov. The pasuk says, "B'mispar Yerachim al Yavoi," that a month of disaster, a month of punishment, should not be counted in the count of the months, even though that pasuk is not really referring to Chodesh Av. There are those that want to argue. There are those that say that quite fakert, there's Agos Mordechai, that says quite the opposite, that says really Chodesh Av is when you should have Shabbos Mevarchim. Give Chodesh Av a boost. It's a Chodesh of Peronius. Give it a bracha. That's when we should be mispal, right? That Shetachadish Aleinu Sachodesh Hazel L'Toiva V'Levracha. But that's when we need that tefillah more than any other time by Chodesh Av. So, like the Chavetz Chaim says, there are mekaymis like this and mekaymis like that. Points out the Mishnah Berurah that there's a mistake some people make, and they shouldn't make that mistake. Says the Chavetz Chaim, why do we have this Shabbos Mevarchim? So many people are aware that back in the day when we was able to have a Beis Hamikdash, it should be rebuilt b'meher v'yameinu, we know that Sanhedrin was Mekadesh the Chodesh. What determined when Rosh Chodesh was, and through that, what determined the Yiddish calendar and determined when Yom Tov fell out? Bezdin was Mekadesh the Chodesh. Sanhedrin declared, the Bezdin declared which day is Rosh Chodesh. So there was an Indian of Kiddush HaChodesh. There are those that think that when we go to Shul on Shabbos and we have Shabbos Mevarchim, it's like we're doing Kiddush HaChodesh. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. Ve'en berachas Rosh Chodesh ke Kiddush HaChodesh shahaya melofanim. This is not like Kiddush HaChodesh back in the day. Ella, the purpose of Shabbos Mevarchim is, like I spoke at earlier, Shamaydim laha'olam masa yachal Rosh Chodesh. It's so that people should be aware of when Rosh Chodesh is. V'yizaru b'chol Hilchos HaChodesh. And therefore they should be careful of the halachas of Rosh Chodesh. They should remember to say Yalav Yavai. They should remember to daven Musaf. The women should remember to refrain from performing certain malacha, which is the next halacha we're going to learn in this sif. Nevertheless, says the Chavetz Chaim, there is an aspect of a reminder of Kiddush HaChodesh in Shabbos Mevarchim, and that is B'kamakim Nagu Lamoid, the minig is to stand B'shas Amiras Rosh Chodesh Pliny b'yom Pliny. When we say, as part of Rosh Chodesh benching, Rosh Chodesh Elul Yeh b'yom Pliny, at that point, everybody should stand. Dugmas Kiddush HaChodesh Shahayom Umid. The Magen Avram says this is similar to Kiddush HaChodesh, which was done standing. Happens to be, there's an interesting Igros Moshe over here, where if Moshe says, Magen Avram says that it should be similar to Kiddush HaChodesh, which was done standing. Kiddush HaChodesh wasn't done standing. Kiddush HaChodesh was done sitting. When Bezdin was Mekadesh HaChodesh, when Av Bezdin said Mekudesh, he wasn't standing, he was sitting. So what does this mean that Kiddush HaChodesh was done standing? Explains Rav Moshe Zechatzadek Levracha that you're right. When the Av Bezdin said Mekudesh, he was sitting. It was Yishuv Bezdin. It was a psak din of Bezdin, which was done b'yeshiva. Elokim nitzav ba'adas keil. It's brought down that in a Bezdin, the Dayanim sit, but the Rabbanan Shalom, the Shechina Kaviyachal, is actually standing over them. Very interesting thing. But a psak din of Bezdin is done b'yeshiva. It's not done by Amida. It's Yeshiva's Bezdin. But, says Rav Moshe, the Mishnah, the Gemara says that the Av Bezdin would say Mekudesh, the Chol Ha'am Oinin Acharav Mekudesh. The Av Bezdin would say Mekudesh, and the people who were by Bezdin would respond. And they would say Mekudesh. They were standing. When they're in the presence of the Dayanim in Bezdin, the Dayanim in Bezdin are sitting, but the observers, they're standing. So when they respond Mekudesh, they're standing. Says the Rishiva Zatzal Rav Moshe that this inyan of Shabbos Bavarchim, when we say Rosh Chodesh Pliny Yeh B'Yoyim Pliny, we're not referencing, we're not manifesting the Av Bezdin who said Mekudesh. We are referencing the responders in Bezdin who responded by saying Mekudesh. So the same way they stood, we stand. Interesting also, Rav Moshe says, it has to be that way. You know why? Because we know that our calendar was set by Hillel HaGadol. Says Rav Moshe that when Hillel set the calendar, that is the manifestation of the Av Bezdin saying Mekudesh. That's when Hillel established the calendar. That's the Av Bezdin saying Mekudesh. When we go on Shabbos Bavarchim and we declare Rosh Chodesh of this month, beyond this and this day, that's the responders. So that's why we stand. Okay. Says the Mechaber Weiter here on Resh Pei Aleph Amud Aleph, bottom line. V'hanoshim shenoi hagois shaloi lasois by malacha. The women that have the minig not to perform malacha on Rosh Chodesh, hu minig toiv, it's a minig toiv. So what do we have from this Mechaber? From the Mechaber we see that women had and have a minig not to do malacha, and the Mechaber declares it to be a minig toiv. It's a good minig. So of course we have to explain what exactly is this minig, where does it come from, does it apply only to women, not to men, what's the extent of the minig, etc., etc. But first, right away, I just want to show you the very beginning of what's a long bir halacha, and we'll speak out some of it. But here on Reish Pei Aleph Amud Aleph, Dibur HaMaschil v'Hanoshim Shenoi Hagois, Chavetz Chaim bring questions right away. Nobody is more medayik. Nobody is more precise, analyzes precisely the language of the Mechaber, the precise language he uses, more than the Chavetz Chaim. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Tzarech in bekavanos HaMechaber. We need to really look into and try and understand what the intent of the Mechaber with these words is, because there are two different ways we could understand this Mechaber. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Im lidaito al kolpanim mitzad minig mechuyavos kol anashim linikein. Is it that all women are mechuyev to have this minig? Mitzad shehu minig kadum, since it's an ancient minig, she'imayseyem echaziku by kvar, their mothers have already established this standing minig. Ukisha'ar dvarim hamutarim, and it's like other things that really me'ikar adin are permissible. Shebenois Yisrael kiblu aleim izmanim kadmoinim, that women have accepted themselves from ancient days. Shebevadai kol hadoros mechuyavim linoikein, and all future generations are mechuyav to follow that minig. In other words, when the Mechaber says, "V'hanoshim shenei hagos shaloi lasos balacha," the women who have the minig not to do malacha, who minig toiv, it's a minig toiv. Does that mean, v'hanoshim shenei hagos shaloi lasos malacha? You should know that women have an established minig, miyamim kadmoinim, from ancient days, already not to do malacha on Rosh Chodesh, and that is a minig toiv, and therefore all women are mechuyev to have that minig. Is that what he means? And he compares it to other things in halacha where we find that there are things that may ikar adin are mutter, and B'nai Yisrael will makabel on themselves an iser, and that iser is absolutely binding. The most prominent one that comes to mind is yoshrim shiva nikim al tipas dam kechardel. There's no such thing as a nida cycle that's less than 12 days, right? Because you always have 7 days of shiva nikim. Even though Me'ikar Din you don't always need. You don't always need 7 days of shiva nikim, right? But it's absolutely a halacha psuka nowadays that you must have 7 days of shiva nikim. So you have 5 days first and then 7 days of shiva nikim. You're never going to have a cycle that's going to be less than 12 days. Why? Because B'nais Yisrael were makabel on themselves to be Yoshev Shiva Nikim on Tipas Dam Kechardel. And that's a binding halacha. It's not optional. So is that what's going on here? There's a minig kadmoinim from the mothers of all of our Noshim Kisherais that there's a minig not to do malacha on Rosh Chodesh and it's absolutely binding. Is that what the Mechaber means? Or continues the Chavetz Chaim in the Bir Halacha, kavanasai, or is his intent rak loyme de isha shenei heges kein hu minig toiv? Or does he mean the women that have such a minig v'hanashiv shenei hagish shelo by malacha? No, hu minig toiv. It's a good minig. You have the minig, you have the minig. You don't have the minig, you don't have the minig. Which way is it? More in a moment. Okay. First says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting baits. V'anashim shenei hagois, that's back on Reish Pei Aleph Amud Aleph. V'anashim shenei hagois, the women that have such a minik, avalim nagu anoshim. If men would try to start such a minik, that they're not going to do malach on Rosh Chodesh, says the Chavetz Chaim, ein zeh minik klal. That's not a minik at all. There's no such thing. No such thing as a minik for men not to do malach on Rosh Chodesh. Doesn't exist. Ois Cut and Gimel, says the Chavetz Chaim, hu minik toiv. Why is this a minig toiv for women not to do malacha? Explains the Mishnah Berurah, lefi shaloi parku nizmeyan la'egel, because the women refused to take off their earrings, their nose rings of gold, for the purposes of making the egel, since it says the pasuk that the men took off their nizamim and gave them to Aaron HaKohen, and from that gold came the egel. The women refused. The women did not take off their nizamim. So lefi shaloi parku nizmein laegel, since they didn't take off the nizamim to contribute to the egel, nited lahem Rosh Chodesh liyom tov. They were given the schus of having Rosh Chodesh as a yom tov, and that's why by the women there's such a thing as a minig not to do malacha, but not by the men. Okay, now we started off this Bir Halacha over here, so the Bir Halacha has this question: is this an optional minig? Is it a binding minig? So let's dive back into the Bir Halacha over here. The Bir Halacha says, so I read the part where the Bir Halacha has the tut stadim of the Shaila. Is it that there's an already established minig and every woman is mechuyev to follow it, or is it optional? If you go back now into the Bir Halacha here on Reish Pei Aleph Amud Beis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down in the column in my print, the Ois V'Hadar print, he says, according to the second approach, that no, it's not binding on everybody. Maybe it's not binding on all women. Okay. He then brings down the words of the Rabbeinu Yerucham. He says that from the Rabbeinu Yerucham, it sounds like it's optional. But then he brings down the Magen Avram, and the Magen Avram is not so quick to say that this is optional. Ela mitzuva is va'omdaisein me'imaisei midaris kidumim. If you go a lot further down in the Bir Halacha, he comes out, so by me, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 lines off the end of this Bir Halacha by the words, V'gam mi Magen Avram, Sivkat Gimel, ain't stira. Daf de l'dvareinu shekol isha tzricha lekabel aleh minig zeh. Even though the Magen Avram does seem to suggest that every woman needs to accept this minig. Again, like the first position that the Bir Halacha put out there, that the Mechaber means that it's a minig toiv v'anashim shenei hagos. This that the women have established a standing minig not to do malacha and Rosh Chodesh is a minig toiv, and it's binding on everybody. But explains the Chavetz Chaim, what does it mean that it's binding on everybody? Hainu de'ena rashal kol panim lasais yom zeh kechoil mamish lasik b'chol hamalachos. The extent to which this is a binding minig is that women have a standing minig that Rosh Chodesh cannot be like a regular weekday. Rosh Chodesh has to be epis more elevated than a regular weekday in that there has to be some type of malacha that is also for them on Rosh Chodesh. That's binding on all of our women nowadays, miyamim kadmoinim, from days of old, that Rosh Chodesh needs to be different than a regular day, and there has to be some form of malacha which they do not engage in on Rosh Chodesh. But to the extent that it should be binding, that they don't do any malacha whatsoever, meaning that they treat it like chalamoyed. There's no havamina to treat it like Shabbos or Yom Tov, but it could be that they should treat it like chalamoyed. So if you want to go to the extent that women should treat Rosh Chodesh like a day of chalamoyed, and they shouldn't do any malacha on Rosh Chodesh that would be also on chalamoyed, dali adavar b'minhaga. That is talui in the minig of different locations. But a woman who, from the time she's a girl, what she was bekabel, the minig from her mother, was that there are certain malachas that she doesn't do. There are certain malachas that she does do. Ain't lesser aleh. You can't answer those malachas on her. So, for example, there are women that are noig that they don't sew on Rosh Chodesh, but they cook and they clean and they do everything else. It's just that they don't sew. There are women that are noig that they don't sew and they don't do laundry, but they do everything else. That's valid. What's binding on every woman is that they have to have a minig that there's certain malacha that they don't do on Rosh Chodesh. Doesn't have to be that they don't do any malacha, unless they live in a place and in a family where the accepted minig is that Rosh Chodesh is like chalamayid, and they don't do any malacha. That's also a valid minig, but only if that's your minig, only if that's the minig of your locale, and that's the minig of your family. That's not binding on everybody. So all that's binding on everybody is that Rosh Chodesh has to have an aspect of Issa Malacha. It has to be elevated above a regular weekday. But it could be that you don't do certain malachas and you do other malachas. Shalzeh ein a mitzvah klal. They're not commanded to make Rosh Chodesh like chalamayid. That was never a minig that was accepted b'chol tfutzos Yisrael, that women should treat Rosh Chodesh like chalamayid. Even in days of old, there were women that had the minig to do certain malacha and not other malacha. There are some that did no malacha. But a woman who accepted upon herself not to do any malacha, to make it like chalamayid, or a woman who accepted upon herself stam, in a general sense, I'm not doing malacha on Rosh Chodesh, then she is going to have a minig not to do any malacha. So against that backdrop, let's go to the Ramah. Says the Ramah here, Reish Pei Aleph Amud Beis, Haga v'im haminig lasais miktzais malachais v'loy lasais ktsasan. Says the Ramah straight out. If a woman's minig is not to do certain malachas, but yet to do other malachas, as linon basar minig, then you follow that minig. And that's what our women do nowadays. Different families, different women have different minhagim. Like I said, some don't sew, some don't do laundry. So whatever the minig is, that's what the minig is. But you aser a certain amount of malacha for women on Rosh Chodesh, so that Rosh Chodesh should not be a regular day. Why? Because they didn't take off their nizamim to contribute gold to the creation of the Egel, and they were given this chus, that by them Rosh Chodesh is a bigger Yom Tov than it is by men. Oz Katan Dalet says the Mishnah Berurah. Azlinan Basar Aminig, you follow the minig. Now the Mishnah Berurah gives over here the background of this Ramah. If you look at the Ramah brings this down from the Beis Yosef. Now, I'm going to tell you the actual language of the Beis Yosef, because that will make what the Mishnah Berurah says a little bit clearer. The Beis Yosef writes like this: the efsher, it's possible, the meikara hachu kabilu alayu. This is what the women originally accepted. when they got this chus, that Rosh Chodesh becomes a bigger Yom Tov for them, the acceptance of that was l'shanoisei mechoil mamish, to make it different than a regular weekday. V'loyle also b'malacha she'enon oisais lehistaker, not to aser all sorts of malacha. No, it's to make it different than a weekday. Going back into the Mishnah Berurah Cotton Dalit, the bevade meikara daiti dahachi chabilu alayolinoid, because that's the Kabbalah that the women originally made. They originally made a Kabbalah to treat it different than a weekday, to aser certain malachas, but not necessarily to aser all malachas. Which malacha? That's tali on the minig. Tali on the minig of families, tali on the minig on locations. That's the background of this Ramah, when the Ramah says when they have a minig to do certain malacha and not others, as lean on basar haminig. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, when or in a place we know that the Kabbalah in this location or in this family was a general acceptance of a broad Isser Malacha for women on Rosh Chodesh, and Lehem Lahakal B'Shum Malacha, then they shouldn't be Mekel on any Malacha. They should treat it like Chalamayid. Whatever's Asr on Chalamayid should be Asr on Rosh Chodesh. Vayin Bir Halacha. Continues the Mishnah Berurah with some other details of Rosh Chodesh. Emhaya Rosh Chodesh Shnei Yamim. On a month when you have 2 days Rosh Chodesh. Now let's remember, when you have 2 days Rosh Chodesh, what's Pshat? What's Pshat? Sometimes you have 2 days Rosh Chodesh, sometimes you have 1 day Rosh Chodesh. So we know that we have months that are malei, we have months that are full, and we have months that are chasar. We have months that are lacking. What does that mean? We have 29-day months, and we have 30-day months. A 29-day month is chasar. It's missing a day. A 30-day month is malei. It's full. It's got 30 days. When you have a chodesh that's malei, you have 2 days Rosh Chodesh. Day 30 is the first day Rosh Chodesh of the next month, and then Aleph of the next month is the second day Rosh Chodesh of the next month. When you have a month that's chasar, when the preceding month is only 29 days, there's only 1 day Rosh Chodesh. Yom Aleph of the next month is going to be Rosh Chodesh. So that's pshat in 1 day Rosh Chodesh, 2 day Rosh Chodesh. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Rosh Chodesh Yamim. If you have 2 days Rosh Chodesh, yesh deos bepoiskim. Now there's a difference of opinion amongst the poiskim. Yesh shekasvu. There are those that write tetzrichin liyos betelin shnei yamim mimalachtam. There are those poiskim that say that when you have 2 days Rosh Chodesh, women have to keep an issa malacha on both days. So that means that they're keeping an Issa Malacha on day 30 of the preceding month, which is the first day Rosh Chodesh, and day 1 of the new month, which is day 2 of Rosh Chodesh. But there are poskim that write that this depends on a variable minig depending on the location. Nevertheless, says the Mishnah Berurah, even according to this opinion, ein lehem lahakel rak yom rishon shehu Rosh Chodesh shu hashlamas chodesh ha'avar aval lo b'yom sheni shehu ikar Rosh Chodesh. Certainly, there's only room for a kula on the first day Rosh Chodesh. In other words, why would there be room for a kula not to have an Issa Malacha on day 1 of Rosh Chodesh? Because day 1 of Rosh Chodesh is not really Rosh Chodesh. Day 1 of Rosh Chodesh is really the last day of the preceding month. So it's not really Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is day 1 of the new month. So if there's room for a kula not to be noyeg, the Issa Malacha, for women on Rosh Chodesh, that's on the first day of a 2-day Rosh Chodesh, not on the second day of a 2-day Rosh Chodesh. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. Yesh noyegin, there are those that have the minig, lehisanois erev Rosh Chodesh, to fast on Erev Rosh Chodesh. Now the Mishnah is going to go into this. Says the Mishnah in the brackets, V'toiv, it's good and proper, sheyaste b'pam rishayna shemesaneh, that the very first time you take on this minig to fast on Erev Rosh Chodesh, she'ena mekabel alav lasei zois la'olam. You should have in mind that you're not being mekabel this as a perpetual and a permanent minig. You're doing it now, but you're not accepting it upon yourself as a permanent minig. The Shema Yeraloi Ezapam Oinus V'lo Yuchal Hisanos. Because maybe 1 month, 5 years later, you're going to be a little bit weaker, you're going to be an older man, and you're not going to be able to fast in Erev Rosh Chodesh. But you already makabel on yourself a Dvar Mitzvah Could be an inyan of a neder. You're going to get yourself into neder shilas. So says the Chavetz Chaim, you're going to be makabel on yourself to fast Erev Rosh Chodesh. Do it al tanai, that it's not a permanent binik. And lo yiyalav kineder, that way it should not become a neder of a davar toiv. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, toiv, it is good. Shamisha misaneh, somebody who is going to fast an Erev Rosh Chodesh, yanik atzmai lahashlim atainis ad halayla. He should fast all the way. He should complete the fast all the way to the end, all the way to nightfall. Why is the Mishnah Berurah saying this? Why is this not a davar pashut? So the truth is, if you go into Hilchos Tainis and you go to Siman Tuf Kuf Samach Beis, over there, this brought down a minig to fast, let's say during Aseres Yimei Tshuva, and it's brought down that those that had the minig to fast during Aseres Yimei Tshuva did not fast all the way to nightfall. Some fasted until after Mincha, some davened an early Ma'ariv and ended the fast then. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if you're fasting for Erev Rosh Chodesh, it's proper to fast all the way to nightfall. Kein mashma me'el yarabah. There are different places that have different minhagim when it comes to this. Everything should be judged according to how strong and able to fast a person is. Having said that, says the Mishnah Berurah, in a location where the fast of Erev Rosh Chodesh is treated as a really serious tainis tzibur, v'korin vayechal, so that they're going to take out the Sefer Torah by Mincha, and they're going to lein vayechal, the Kriyas HaTorah of a tainis tzibur, v'hu nimne imahem, and this person is going to be one of the 10 making up the minyan to take out the Sefer Torah and lein vayechal, bevadei tzarich lahashlim. Then he certainly has to complete his fast all the way to nightfall. Because if you're taking out a Sefer Torah, if you're making a minyan, you're taking out a Sefer Torah, and you're going to have Kriyas HaTorah of a tainis tzibur, it has to be a bona fide tainis tzibur. A bona fide tainis tzibur, you have to be mashlim. You have to fast all the way till nightfall. So then there's no option of not keeping this fast until nightfall. Va'afilu m'chal be'erev Shabbos. Even if Erev Rosh Chodesh would be on Friday, Erev Shabbos, which we generally don't fast except for Asar B'Tevis, right? But if Erev Rosh Chodesh is on Erev Shabbos and you're going to make it a real tainis tzibur with Kriyas HaTorah vayechal, you certainly are going to have to be mashlim the tainis and fast until nightfall. V'ayin l'kamon siman tavkov samach vav siv beis of a Mishnah Berurah sham. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, v'yesh noyagin, there are those that have the minig lasis lemincha seder yom hakipurim katan. There are those that make on Erev Rosh Chodesh what we call Yom Kippur katan. We're coming up soon to Rosh Chodesh El. Many people have the minig to have Yom Kippur katan on Erev Rosh Chodesh El, even if they don't do it the rest of the year. So the Mishnah Berurah brings down here the minig of Yom Kippur katan. V'tam l'shem zeh. Where does this come from? Yom Kippur Katan. Where does this come from? This can be seen in a Pri Chadash who brings down the Maharam Kardavera Zal. The Maharam Kardavera, many people don't know that the Maharam Kardavera is the Baal Mechaber of the Sefer Talmud Devorah. He was also a Rebbe of the Arizal. So we're not talking small stuff here, right? The Maharam Kardavera. Hayakari Isai Kippur Katan. That's what it's based on. It was based on the Maharam Kardavera, who referred to Erev Rosh Chodesh as Kippur Katan. Vos epis. Why is it Yom Kippur Katan? Lefi shebay miskaprim avonos shel kol hachodesh. Because the truth is that on Rosh Chodesh is a day of kapara for all of your averos from the previous month. Dumya desa'ir shel Rosh Chodesh. We could find a precedent for this in the carbon musaf of Rosh Chodesh. On Rosh Chodesh, we have a special carbon, a sa'ir chatos. We bring a carbon tzibur, a chatos tzibur, for the musaf on Rosh Chodesh. That's to bring kapara for the averos of Klal Yisrael on Rosh Chodesh. The chida'aminan b'musaf, like we say when we daven musaf, I lost the place. Zman kapara l'chol toldoisam. We refer to Rosh Chodesh as being Zman kapara, a time of kapara l'chol toldoisam. What does that mean? So let's open up a siddur over here and go to Musaf of Rosh Chodesh, right? So what do we say? We say Rosh Chodashim. I daven nusach Sfarad, Rabbi say Rosh Chodashim la'amcha nasata. You gave Rosh Chodesh to your nation. Zman kapara, it's a time of kapara, a time of atonement. L'chol toldoisam. What are toldoisam? So, Eile toldois Noach. These are the generations. These are the offspring of Noach. Shem, Cham, and Yafes. Says Rashi, really, Elul told us Noach. The pasuk says, Noach ish tzaddik. Noach was a tzaddik. Tamim haya b'doraisav. He was perfect in his generation. Says Rashi, Elul told us Noach ish tzaddik? Says Rashi, yeah. Iker toldoisayim shall a tzaddik. The Iker toldois of a tzaddik are his maisim tovim. So what does it mean here? Zman kapar l'chol toldoisam. You could read it. Zman kapar l'chol toldoisam. It's the Zman kapar for all of the offspring of Klal Yisrael. In that case, it would mean that every member of Klal Yisrael, Rosh Chodesh, is a time of kapara for every member of Klal Yisrael. Or you could learn it, Zman kapara l'chol toldoisam. It's a Zman of kapara for all of the tolados of all of the days of the month. L'chol toldoisam. Toldoisam means their toldos. If we understand it the first way, it means the toldos, the offspring, the descendants of Klal Yisrael. Toldoisam, their offspring. Or it could be Zman kapar l'chol toldoisam. It's a Zman kapar of all of the tolados of all of the days of the month. L'chol toldoisam. All the happenings of, all of their happenings. Whose happenings? All of the happenings of all of the days of the month. Says the Mishnah Berurah here, that's the way we're understanding it. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'chedekasav abeis Yosef b'simen tavchav gimel d'ramascha v'oimde b'shema orches chayim ki kinoi tol doisam. The understanding of the word tol doisam is koi al hechadoshim. Their toldos doesn't mean the toldos of Klal Yisrael. It means the tolados of all of the days of the month, meaning everything that happened on every day of the previous month. We have Rosh Chodesh as a Zman Kapara l'chol toldoisam, for everything that occurred on every day of the previous month. We're bringing this Karban Chatos Tzibur as a kapara for all of the tolados, all of the things that occurred on all of the days of the month. Ad kan lashon apri chadash. So, why do we have this Indian of Yom Kippur Cotton? Why would we have a fast on Erev Rosh Chodesh? Because Rosh Chodesh is a shtickle Yom Kippur Cotton. It's a little day of kapara. It's a day where we could get kapara for all of the averis of the preceding month. Not on Erev Rosh Chodesh, on Rosh Chodesh. But we can't fast on Rosh Chodesh. So we do it on Erev Rosh Chodesh. The Kosav HaMagen Avraham, the Magen Avraham writes, the minig tov loimer ha-slichus. The Magen Avraham writes, it's a good minig to say slichus. Hainu Yom Kippur Cotton, Kadmit Tfilas HaMincha. The Magen Avraham says that those slichus of Yom Kippur Cotton on Erev Rosh Chodesh should be recited before Mincha. Why? Because once we daven Mincha on Erev Rosh Chodesh, we're already a shtickle going into Rosh Chodesh. We're already being mekabel on ourselves a little bit the Yom Tov aspect of Rosh Chodesh, and therefore fasting would be saying slichas would be inappropriate. So if you're going to say slichas on Erev Rosh Chodesh, says the Magen Avraham, do it before Mincha. And in places where they give a powerful Musa Shmuz, Divrei Kibushim means pressing words. What does it mean, pressing words? Where we press on people to humble themselves and do tshuva. Yom Gam came Karnut Tfilas HaMincha, those Musa Shmuzim should be given before Mincha, not after. Having said that, the Mishnah Berurah says that in our times, the minig is to say slichas after Mincha. What happens if Erev Rosh Chodesh is on Shabbos? So Rosh Chodesh is Sunday. Yom Kippur Cotton is not compatible with Shabbos. You can't fast on Shabbos, you can't say slichas on Shabbos. Magdimin lehisanis b'yom chamishi. We pull back the fast of Yom Kippur Cotton, not the Friday, to Thursday. Why? We don't want to pull it back to Friday because we brought down already earlier the Inyan that if you're going to fast on Erev Rosh Chodesh, you should be mashlim the tainus. You should fast all the way to nightfall. That's not so ideal on Erev Shabbos because we don't want to fast into Shabbos. So if Rosh Chodesh is Sunday, so already you have to advance Yom Kippur Cotton of Erev Rosh Chodesh because you can't do it on Shabbos. Don't advance it to Erev Shabbos and get into a shaila whether or not you should be mashlim the tainus on Erev Shabbos. Pull it back to Thursday and be mashlim the tainus on Thursday. V'im chal b'yom shishi. Okay. What if Erev Rosh Chodesh falls out on Erev Shabbos? What if Rosh Chodesh is Shabbos? So now Erev Rosh Chodesh is Friday. And really you could fast on Friday. Then it depends. If you have the minute to say Slichas, pull it back to Thursday. Because Slichas is just incompatible with Erev Shabbos. But if you're not going to say Slichas, okay, fast on Erev Shabbos, which is Yom Kippur Cotton. But what should you do about being mashlim the tainus? You're going to have to fast all the way into Shabbos. Where over there it says that your taka shouldn't be mashlim the tainus. Writes, somebody who has the minute to fast on Erev Rosh Chodesh, he should eat dinner quickly. So if he's going to fast on Erev Rosh Chodesh, he should make it his business not to stretch out the fast and get home and break your fast and eat supper quickly. Even if you're going to be mashlim the tainus, you're going to fast until nightfall, but right after nightfall, break your tainus and eat, because you don't want to go into Rosh Chodesh. It's Rosh Chodesh. It's a shtickle Yom Tov. You don't want to go into Rosh Chodesh suffering. Don't delay breaking your tainus after Tzeis HaKachavim. But again, you have the minute to be mashlim the tainus. You have to be mashlim the tainus. The Magen Avram brings down additional minhagim of Yom Kippur Cotton. And he concludes, everyone should follow their minig b'inyan atainis. Whatever your minig is, you shouldn't be makel on that minig unless you're matir neder. Kosva svarim, the Svarim HaKadoshim write, even somebody who does not have the minig to fast on Erev Rosh Chodesh, mikam makom. Having said that, definitely use the opportunity of Erev Rosh Chodesh to do tshuva. And to try to be misakein, to try to improve, fix up, repair whatever you might have done wrong in the previous month. Because it's the final day of the preceding month. The same way we find that the last day of the year, Erev Rosh Hashanah, is the last day of the preceding year, and it presents a unique opportunity to be misakein all of areas that you might have done in the previous year. So Erev Rosh Hashanah is the last day of the preceding year. You could misaken everything you did wrong in the preceding year. Erev Rosh Chodesh is the last day of the preceding month. You have an opportunity to do tshuva, to be misaken anything you may have done wrong in the preceding month. And if you do that, says the Chavetz Chaim, you certainly will be zoiche that Rosh Chodesh will taka be as man kapara for you, and you will receive kapara for everything you may have done wrong in the previous month. Thank you for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be Megan against Klal Yisrael. The Baruch Hashem should send Yeshua's refuahs parnasa and shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zoichet to see the Bias Gal Tzedek b'meher v'yameinu amen. Be well.